to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Happy New Year. Zach Owens, Johnny Sobchak. We are back for another year of movie, TV, podcasting. Johnny, how is 2022 treating you so far?
Can't complain. We're on day 2, so I don't even know what's going on out here.
Nothing's gone wrong yet.
Can't complain at this juncture. So we're off to a good start, I guess. There's no complaints. Definitely still trying to get mentally back to like a post-holiday, post-vacation mindset with work and everything else. But yeah, it's good. It's good catching up on some movies, voting and stuff.
I was gonna say that catching up, that mindset applies to Inside the Film Room as well, because this is our first podcast since Spider-Man, since December 17th.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we're only 2 days into the new year, but we've got some catching up to do on the end of last year, as that's the main topic for today. We're talking about our top 10 movies of 2021, looking back on everything that the year offered. So we'll be breaking that down, and we've got some news to get into. We've got to catch up on the last couple of weeks. But first off, we just want to say thank you to everyone who supported us in 2021. What a year. We put our little by the numbers graphic out on social media, and Johnny and I are both super proud of everything that Inside the Film Room was able to do. Obviously, some big things like launching the newsletter, which, again, if you haven't subscribed yet, go subscribe to the Rewind. Our YouTube channel really taking off, getting some good interviews with talent rather than just Johnny and I babbling back and forth. So it's been a big year. We've gotten a lot more followers on social media, so just growing the audience, and we really appreciate everyone who follows us in any capacity, listens to the podcast, subscribes anywhere. So thank you for that. Johnny, I don't know if you have any words of thanks that you would like to let the sweet people know.
You did a pretty good job summing it up. It was definitely a banner.
I just didn't know if you had anything to add in there.
No, I mean, it was definitely a very productive and like good year for the website and for the podcast, and a number of other things to kind of just improve and expand. And of course, you can't really do a lot of that if you don't have eyeballs and ears available and offered up by listeners and readers to keep that on the right track. So of course, thank you everyone that has been listening and watching and supporting for the last 12 months and or more and or less. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Hopefully this will be a very, very big year. I'm suspecting some big things are on the horizon, and from as early as the Batman in a couple months here in March to the end of the year, where we might just have the first James Cameron film in like 13 years. There's a lot of excitement and films, television, etc. So join us.
We're just getting started.
Exactly.
Well, like you said, there's a ton to look forward to, but this episode is looking back. So if you were looking for 2022, come back later. We're talking 2021 today. Johnny, I know you mentioned it, cramming, fitting in some last films of 2021. We had our voting for North Carolina Film Critics Association. So it was a busy time among the holidays and all the other busyness that was going on. So fill the people in. I know you dominated this way more than me. You were watching like 3 movies a day. So I don't know if you have the full list of everything, but just what have been some highlights for you? I know obviously we haven't podcasted since Spider-Man, so that means like not only just recapping the whole year, but we didn't talk about The Matrix. We didn't talk about Don't Look Up or Tragedy of Macbeth or Licorice Pizza, any of like those ones that came out in the last 2 weeks. So any big highlights on movies or TV that you've wanted to touch on from the last couple weeks?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of hit some bullet points here and just some brief thoughts on what because I have checked out a number of things since we first saw Spider-Man and talked about that. The Matrix Resurrections, that was the first thing I saw since I got back from my vacation. I saw Spider-Man for the second time while actually on vacation. I fit that into our itinerary, and that was a really fun time going to see that. It was a Saturday night showing. It was sold out. There was like 500 people in there. It was crazy. Great energy, and the film just got better for me. So Spider-Man, No Way Home, if you didn't know by now, big stamp of approval on that. But coming back, we saw the Matrix Resurrections in IMAX. We didn't stay at home for HBO Max. I actually went out and saw it, and I was definitely mixed on it. I wasn't blown away. I didn't think it was great, but I didn't think it was bad either. I thought it was kind of more in the middle. I thought it was mostly fine. I thought there was some great highlights for sure. Some clever, very meta and subversive kind of ways that they went with the story and some of the themes. But overall, a little bit, I would have to label it as a disappointment, unfortunately. Still give it a look if you're a fan of the franchise and thought that, this one looked good. But just keep your expectations in check, maybe. Drive My Car, great Japanese film from last year that's in the best foreign picture conversation with all the awards. It's been winning a lot, getting a lot of nominations. I thought it was great. I can't wait to rewatch it. It is a 3-hour watch, so definitely buckle up. No pun intended if you're going to actually try and watch that. But I definitely give it a recommendation, and I plan on rewatching it in the near future to see if my feelings even get higher on it. Red Rocket also was starring Simon Rex from writer-director Sean Baker. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was like quite on the level I was hoping for. Maybe I thought it was funny. I thought it was definitely like irreverent and gross and despicable, and the main character especially. But I wasn't really sure if it paid off or all came together at the end. But definitely would give it a recommendation. Check it out. Simon Rex in particular has a great performance. Don't Look Up. This is probably one of the most discourse-heavy films other than Spider-Man and The Matrix from the last few weeks. Again, I thought it was fine, I would say. There were some parts that made me laugh. There were some parts I thought were well done or interesting. But then there was a lot of it that I thought was not as interesting or not funny or not, very, nuanced or offering anything new to the conversation. And then the last few here, I got Cyrano with Peter Dinklage, Haley Bennett, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. I thought, again, kind of middle of the road for me. I thought some of the music was quite nice on the ears, but the lyrics, choreography, some of the things that you would expect to really elevate a musical weren't all quite there. Peter Dinklage, though, really stood out with a great performance, one of the best leading man performances of the last year or so. And then yesterday on January 1st, I really cranked up as we're getting ready to make our final ballots and votes for North Carolina Film Critics Association. I knocked out Summer of Soul, the documentary from Questlove, which is really great, a really great historical document about something that I had absolutely no knowledge of, and I feel like most people don't. So give that a look. It's on Hulu if you can check that out. And then The Lost Daughter on Netflix lived higher than my expectations. I think Olivia Colman was amazing. I thought Maggie Gyllenhaal was a very interesting directorial debut with some promising talent there. And then lastly, Encanto last night. Checked it out with my girlfriend and her family, her younger sisters. They all quite liked it. They thought it was good or great. I thought it was pretty damn good. Not necessarily top tier Disney. I think it was a little lesser Disney in that regard, especially compared to even things like Frozen or Moana, which I think have some show-stopping sequences and some strong characters and like memorable moments. I feel like Encanto is a little bit subpar in that area, but I thought still there was some really emotional highs. It was funny, beautiful to look at, but maybe just not as memorable as some of the other ones from like the last decade or so. And that pretty much brings us totally up to date. Totally up to date.
That's quite a lot. You were not exaggerating when you said you were cramming. Quick point about Encanto. I talked about that a couple weeks ago when we were reviewing it. But I may have mentioned this then. I don't remember. But when we were voting for best original song, I just didn't know which one to go with, because like you said, the show-stopping moments, there wasn't a How Far I'll Go, there wasn't a Let It Go. it seemed like all of the songs were like equal across the board. So I ended up nominating, when I was making my nominations, I did 2 from Encanto just because I was like, I don't know which one is like, I know that they're
Which
the
one
one
is
that they
that?
are pushing. They are pushing like Dos Orgullitos, or I don't know if I said that correctly, but that's like the one. But I thought that We Don't Talk About Bruno was like a more fun song.
Bruno's
Um,
good, yeah.
But
Wait, so which one is the one you voted for?
I
Your nominee?
nominated We Don't Talk About Bruno and Dos Orgullitas, which is like, that's the one that like on Disney's FYC site, that like that's the one that they're going for, which is like the one that it kind of, no character sings it. It's just kind of like in the movie when
Oh,
like
is
the
that towards the
climax
end
is
where
happening.
it's all
It's like
Spanish,
the
right?
guitar and like the, yeah.
Okay.
It's
That's
like
good.
when the transformation is happening back.
Okay. Gotcha. I
But
think that
that's
maybe my favorite was the miracle one that she sings, like toward the beginning.
the
When
waiting,
like
what is it, Waiting on a Miracle or something
it's
like
like it's
that.
like in slow motion and she's kind of going around the house while they're all like taking a picture and like celebrating and whatnot.
Mhm.
I thought that was good. Yeah, but yeah, overall, I mean, you could certainly tell it was Lin-Manuel, like 100% to a T. And I definitely think Moana stands above this one with regards to the lyrics and the music. You know,
Right.
there's definitely more memorable and show-stopping sequences and songs from that than this. And but I still thought this was good. It was just again a little bit lesser than the others.
I can agree with you there. But if you want the full thoughts on Encanto, rewind it a couple weeks and you can hear me talk about that and Johnny talk about House of Gucci again. But my cram session was not anything compared to yours. I talked about this on Twitter recently when I was going through my top TV shows of the year, but my overall viewing this year really shifted to, I would say it used to be like, I've always liked TV and movies a lot and like watched both, but I would say it used to be like 70-30 split in movies' favor. And I think this year it was like 60-40, if not like 50-50. Like I was watching a lot more TV. So the past couple weeks have been very TV heavy as well. On the movie front, I only watched 2 new 2021 releases. I watched The Power of the Dog, which had been out, but I just needed to catch up on that. And then Don't Look Up, which I'm with you on that one, that it was, had some moments, had some misses, was anything but, it's not that it was trying to be subtle, but like the lack of subtlety kind of, it worked at some points, didn't work at other times, and it kind of just beat you over the head a little bit too much.
It's
but
also
I will
long.
say,
It is long.
yes, that it was what, 215, something like that, and it could have been 140 and been much tighter. But while we're talking about original song and music, Ari crushed it. Just look at, not as an actress, but as the song. It's stupid and silly, but it's a banger. But Nicholas Britell's score for that, I've been listening to that quite a bit since watching the movie.
I was
Our
impressed with it.
Succession King, but it's a lot of fun, kind of like swanky jazz almost. Which is, he's so versatile, from the Barry Jenkins stuff with Beale Street and Moonlight to then be Succession and the iconic theme song, and then something like this. Just one of the best working right now. But I know I promised you this last December, Johnny, but I watched Klaus for the first time as we were approaching Christmas. So finally got to check that out. It was delightful. I wouldn't say, I know it for you, it's like all time, like every Christmas rewatch it, like you fell in love with it. I thought it was fun and charming, but it's not a Christmas classic for me, not yet. So watch that. And then also watched, in preparation for the Matrix Resurrections, I watched the original Matrix for the first time, and was very impressed with that. But I definitely needed to just like spend some time like processing it. So I still haven't made my way to the second or third one, or even obviously Resurrection. So like I didn't know, you hadn't seen 2 or 3 either, had you? You just saw 1 and then this?
Yeah, so like I've only seen the first one a few times. I'm like very familiar with like where the story goes in the sequels and like what ultimately ends up happening, but I've not sat down and watched those movies before. No.
Gotcha. Because I was like contemplating, I think I had asked Jake, because he's like the huge Matrix fan. I was trying to figure out if I needed to watch all three because they like don't have the reputation of the first one. So I've watched that first one.
They reference the sequels a lot in Resurrection. So I would
maybe
say
that'll
watch
be
them.
a slow process to get knowing the mixed reviews of Resurrections. It made my sense of urgency to catch up kind of went down a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there, but definitely was impressed with the first one. But on the TV front, I was very, very busy. I at work we're doing some like my real job outside of Inside the Film Room. We're doing some social campaigning for the TV show Snowpiercer, which is the spinoff, the prequel series for Bong Joon-ho's movie, which is on TNT. And so I'd started that show like back when it was live on TV, the first season, and I watched a couple episodes, but just never continued with it. So it's got Daveed Diggs in it. He's like the starring passenger. But so I spent the last like 2 weeks. I say 2 weeks, but like it took maybe like 2 or 3 days of just like full-time like commitment to like binging it all. So watched 2 seasons of that to get up to speed so I can do my job, which is kind of like a dream to be having that be part of your job. But that show is very good. I'm very excited. Season 3 comes back January 24th. So I will be fully up to speed for that. So that ended up making I know we're talking top 10 movies of the year today, but if you want top 10 TV shows, you can check that out on the website. I've broken mine down there. But one thing that did not make the cut, Snowpiercer was 9, by the way. But I started on the day after I published that, The Sex Lives of College Girls on HBO Max, which is a Max original. It's by Mindy Kaling, obviously from The Office and the Mindy Project, a lot of other things. Great comedic writer, but it's fantastic. This show is hysterical. It's done now. It did 10 episodes a little bit, like a couple of weeks ago. I think it just wrapped up. But like if I had watched this a couple days earlier, it would have been on my top 10 for sure. So I have 2 episodes left in that. So I've been binging that over the last couple of days, and it's just so fucking funny. It's about 4 girls in college, and it's not contrary to the title. Like, yes, it's about like their personal lives, but like it's just like about their college experience, and it's absolutely hilarious. And Renee Rapp is the star, the lead in that, who she is from Charlotte and went to I can't remember if she went to NCS or if she went to the North Carolina School of the Arts or if she just went to like Northwestern School of the Arts, which is like the high school version. But so a little local flavor there. And she played Regina George on Broadway as well in the Mean Girls musical. But so that's a fantastic show. Started Book of Boba Fett. Obviously 1 episode came out. I don't know if we'll be talking about it week to week. I know, Johnny, you have not watched and are back and forth on whether you will be watching. But the first episode was similar to The Mandalorian, I'd say, in that it's like a lot of like, it's going to be chapter by chapter. We'll see what happens. It wasn't some like big explosive introduction to this show or this character. So we'll see how that plays out. Yesterday, I spent my day. I started off the new year with old friends as I watched. I don't know if I would talk about this in the movie section or the TV section, but the Harry Potter Return to Hogwarts 20th anniversary reunion was so heartwarming. It was brilliant. I was tearing up a couple times in that, as it's like an hour and 45 minutes and it's got everybody back together, and it's really compelling, like not just like showing behind the scenes stuff, but kind of seeing them talk about it with each other rather than just like okay, I'm Daniel Radcliffe talking to the camera about something in like an interview style. So that was a lot of fun. And then I just started rewatching Euphoria last night, as season 2 is coming out a week from today on January 9th. So I am trying to get caught back up with everything that we had a new trailer for season 2. So I know you're probably equally as excited as I am to get back into that world and to see season 2 looks nuts. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that next week and the following weeks as that season really gets kicked off. So a lot of TV, a couple movies, and just a lot of really quality stuff on my screen the last couple weeks.
You love to see it.
You truly do. quite literally love to see that quality content. But let's get into a couple different pieces of news, a couple trailers that we got over the last couple of weeks that we want to be able to touch on. Not coming January 9th with Euphoria, but instead January 13th, we have the first DC series of this new era. Peacemaker is hitting HBO Max. We got a I don't know what this is at this point, like a second or third trailer for it. John Cena, James Gunn, the Suicide Squad spinoff. Did you watch the trailer, or are you just like ready to have this show happen?
I watched most of it. I think I remember watching like at least
like I said, there've been like two or three different trailers at this point. So I'm kind of like, I watched this one as well, but I'm like, let's just get this thing on the road. I don't need to see anymore.
Yeah, no, it's so close now, as you mentioned. But yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm not like bursting at the seams to watch it, but I think it'll at least be good, with potential to be great. Because I was a big fan of the Suicide Squad, as people who have been listening since August at least would know, or keeping up with me on Twitter. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this and seeing what ends up happening. I mean, James Gunn, he's been proven to be pretty reliable when it comes to the comic book movie genre, although we haven't seen him in the series format yet. And so I think that'll be an interesting wrinkle to this project.
Yeah, and I'm just like so curious about where everything goes, because we know this is set after the events of Suicide Squad. So we saw at the end that Peacemaker is in fact alive. So it's set after Suicide Squad, but it's somewhat of like an origin story exploring. So I assume we'll get flashbacks, and it'll be some past, some present. So I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities here. And we saw obviously we've long known the talent of James Gunn and the Guardians universe and DC now with Suicide Squad. So I'm excited to watch this continue and see what DC's got when it comes to like big budget TV series. Like obviously last year was overwhelming with 5 Marvel shows. So I'll be excited to see how this plays out. And we've got 8 episodes, I think. So they're starting on January 13th. It'll be a weekly release. So that'll be another one that we'll just have to turn this into, like, if we're talking Euphoria, we're talking Peacemaker, we're talking a movie every week. Like it's going to be a 3-hour podcast. So we'll have to pick and choose what we talk about. But while we're talking DC,
with regards to the last thing I'll say about Peacemaker and TV in general, I am looking forward to, because we have been so saturated with MCU shows over the last 12 months. I'm looking forward to DC having like a foothold and offering something just different tonally and stylistically. This does not look like an MCU show. It doesn't sound like an MCU show. It's going to be a hard TVMA or rated R, however you want to say it. And also just visually. And I feel like with that regards to action and stuff, it's going to offer a nice, departure. And I have liked some of the MCU shows and I love Loki. But I am looking forward to having that variety. And I think that's something that we should all be wanting to see. And hopefully, if this does well, if people like it, and I know they have other shows in the pipeline, but with regards to DC and just superhero comic book movie shows in general, I think this is hopefully a promising start for this year and like just moving forward.
Definitely. What else is in the pipeline for DC, Johnny? Your Twitter has made its shift from the Dune Hive to the Bat Hive, the Bat Cave, I guess.
Yeah, it is. We are a little over 2 months away from the Batman. I am so unbelievably stoked. This has been one of my top 3 most anticipated films for like half a decade now. It feels like, or is at least close to being a reality. I can still remember the nights, like the actual days when I found out Ben Affleck was stepping down from directing the Batman, and that they were in looking for a new filmmaker to direct him in a Batman movie. And Matt Reeves was toward the top of that list. This was at the beginning of, so it's been half a decade, because this was at the beginning of 2017, mind you. It's 2022 now, and it was like January or February when he stepped down and that news broke. And then one of the people on the short list was Matt Reeves. And I was like, oh man, I love Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I'm so excited for War for the Planet of the Apes. I think he'd be a great choice. then that movie, the last movie of that trilogy, was just fantastic. One of my favorites of the last decade. And then I remember finding out, oh, Matt Reeves is agreeing to do it. And then it was like, oh, wait, he's not going to do it. I'm like, that's a terrible idea. And then slowly but surely it evolved into, okay, Ben Affleck's actually not even going to be the Batman anymore. They're going to have to get someone else. And it was like, who the hell are they going to get? And then Robert Pattinson, lo and behold, I think that was like May 2019, I want to say, when he got cast. And then it's just evolved into this great, big, epic project. And I think with all the footage that we've seen and everything we've heard to date, leading up to the end of 2021, was promising. People were going like nuts for it. And I think this last trailer, and this, where it's not, it remains to be seen whether this will be the last trailer, final trailer for the Batman, or if we'll get another. But for it being the most recent and kind of coming in very close to when this movie should actually be coming out, I think it would be a very strong denouement, if you want to say, for them to be entering like the big final marketing push.
Well, what were the thoughts here? I know, like you said, we're 2 months away. I watched this trailer, but at this point, similar to Peacemaker, I'm just like, I don't need to see more. You talked about it a second ago. Like, we know that this is going to be fantastic. Like, we are already so all in on this movie that I want to go in almost blind. Like, it's not blind, it's Batman. I know stuff about Batman, but like, I'm just so excited to actually like witness the final product that I don't want to have anything take away from that. So
yeah,
with that being said, I know obviously the trailer was the cat and the bat. I almost said the bat and the hat. But obviously big emphasis on Zoe Kravitz, on Robert Pattinson, Catwoman, and Batman. What was the reaction here? Is it possible for you to be more excited for this movie, or is it just like, have you peaked already?
Well, I didn't think it was possible, and then this trailer came out. So
and the TV spot, which you were talking about on Twitter
yes,
a day or two ago.
Yes. So I mean, I didn't need a new trailer. I didn't need any new footage. This was already, like I said, from the get-go, from the jump, and the concept of one of my most anticipated films, really, of all time. For anyone who isn't really familiar or doesn't know, like, I am definitely a DC oriented person when it comes to reading the comics, playing video games, etc., watching shows and movies. When I was a kid, the Batman 89 and Batman Returns were like some of my favorite movies. I even watched the Joel Schumacher Batman movies on VHS like nonstop. And then of course the Dark Knight and like the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole was very formative for me as like a movie fan. So yeah, you could say I was a little excited for this. And of course, I had full faith in Matt Reeves, full faith in Robert Pattinson from the jump of them coming onto this thing. And then, of course, Greg Fraser, Michael Giacchino, the incredible like crew that they've assembled. The cast, of course, the supporting cast is amazing. So yeah, I was totally sold. The trailers have been incredible, but it had been, let's see, that I think it was in October. It was like mid-October when the last trailer came out. So it had been like 2.5 months. So, I mean, it wasn't like a super short period of time. So I can understand why they'd want to drop this now as we're like leaning into the new year, and they're kind of, Warner Brothers is shifting their focus from maybe Dune and the Matrix to Batman. But yeah, I loved everything about this. I love the footage. I think it looks unbelievable, as we already knew, but we're getting more new shots. We're getting a lot of old shots as well, which is good to kind of like keep it, not all brand new, but just amazing, like what Greg Fraser is doing coming off of Dune. It just looks phenomenal. And I think the relationships, as you were kind of pointing out, between Bruce and Selena Kyle, I think looks like it's going to be the best that it's ever been. I think especially knowing that this is the very first film in what is poised to be a trilogy. I think there's a lot of room to grow. A lot of room to grow. I mean, when we got the Catwoman with Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton, that was one movie. And that was the second movie for Michael Keaton. And then they didn't do any more with Michael Keaton or Tim Burton. With the Dark Knight trilogy, Selena Kyle was introduced in the third and final movie, and that was it. Here we're getting her from the get-go with the first film in what could be a trilogy, and it would seem like she would appear in every single movie. Similar, we're talking about Spider-Man. MJ, she's in all three of those movies. She doesn't just pop up in the second one and then come into the third or come in at the very end. Like that's a relationship and a character dynamic that they, I think, did a pretty good job at the very least of developing and kind of expanding. And I think that's a good example of what can be done with these kind of iconic superhero relationships. I think Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and MJ is a very famous and significant one, but I think Batman and Catwoman is certainly up there, especially for people who are both heroes. Selena Kyle is kind of like an anti-hero, however you want to depict it. But I think that's looking great and is going to be very promising. And then the Riddler, Paul Dano, I think is the other key thing here. We didn't see so much of Penguin. We didn't see any of John Turturro's character or Peter Sarsgaard's character. We got a little bit more of Gordon, which I thought looked very, very promising. Them working together looks awesome. But Paul Dano as the Riddler is a huge presence once again. I love what they're doing with the voice modulation. I love his costume, like his just very intimidating look. Like it's so far from what Jim Carrey did, which I think is a good thing. I think that's kind of where you need to go with it at this point. But I think a lot of people, when they heard that the Riddler was going to be the villain of this movie, like the primary antagonist, were like, how are you going to do that? Is that really going to work? How do you not make it goofy?
You make him a fucking psychopath serial killer. That's how.
Yeah. And this is how, folks. So the voice modulation, great. The costume is great. The actual cipher like riddles that we're getting, like Zodiac killer style, looks great. And just, I mean, he's talking, all of his dialogue so far essentially is in riddles. Like it's staying true to that character in the comics and in the video games and previous iterations where he talks in riddles, but he is so creepy and like intimidating, like, and it works. Like the riddles actually work, and I'm so excited to see more of. And I loved how they kind of wrapped up this trailer where you see that riddle posed to the audience and to Batman, and he answers like it's justice, and it actually it lines up pretty well. So I'm really looking forward to puzzles and riddles in this movie. I love a good mystery movie, especially like a crime thriller mystery. There's been a lot of David Fincher comparisons to Seven and Zodiac, and rightfully so. And Paul Dano himself was in one with Prisoners from Denis Villeneuve. So this is going to be, I think this is going to be really special. And of course, I think the other big factor that people were keying in on with this new trailer was the action, especially at the end where Catwoman and Batman show up and they're just kicking ass together. And it looks straight out of a video game or an animated movie or series. I mean, they're working like in tandem, and Batman is moving fluidly. He is moving with speed. Michael Caine talking about Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, where he's like the ferociousness, the speed. It's like he definitely has that down. And I think that's something that, even if you love the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Batman, if you love the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale Batman, the one thing that I think a lot of people would critique about those is the action isn't necessarily that great, especially the fight scenes. Action overall might be pretty good, but the fight scenes were never really true to the comics necessarily, or like what you might expect. Zack Snyder and Batfleck, I think the one thing people would agree on is the action was good. They did a good job kind of bringing that to life. But here, though, it seems like this is going to be a very good, at least first, even just a starting point for a younger Batman to be kicking ass and like jumping through rooftops and ceilings and taking bullets and just all this other great stuff. So I really can't praise this enough. It's been done. I've said it, to death at this point. I just really 2 months now. Hopefully in about a month, we'll be able to buy tickets. I'll be going at least 2 or 3 times opening weekend, I am sure, in IMAX and Dolby, etc. So I think this is poised to be the next huge film. And,
the next Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not expecting it to do 250 million domestically opening weekend or $1 billion at the box. Spider-Man's going to be close to $2 billion when all is said and done. Definitely not expecting that from this, but I think it'll have at least 100 million opening weekend in the US, maybe 150 million. And we'll be very close to around 1 billion when all said and done worldwide. I think this is going to be the biggest hit of the pandemic apart from Spider-Man. And those are the two biggest comic book heroes. So I think that makes sense.
Right. That I was going to say that those two coming out. So you had your tweet about like the definitive versions coming out within months of each other, but also like when we're looking at just the pandemic box office and what constitutes a big hit now, like having the two, sure, like after the MCU, like Iron Man is so popular now, but like at the core of like superheroes and comic books and stuff, it's Spider-Man and Batman that have always been like the
especially
biggest
in film.
Right. But I want to talk, this was news to me, at least. You may have known this, but I feel like it was recently announced because I had not heard it, and I tend to keep up with these things. But the Batman, it's not doing, obviously HBO Max's like day and date release was just a 2021 thing, but it's hitting HBO Max April 19th. So just over a month after releasing in theaters March 4th. So people will watch it in theaters for a month and then it goes to HBO Max. I'm curious, like you were just talking about financials, like who knows what the status of the pandemic will be at that point in a couple months down the way. But it's interesting because, you know, when you look at what's around this, there's nothing, the biggest competitor ahead of this, and it's not even close, would be Uncharted on February 18th. So you've got 2 weeks between that releasing and March 4th when Batman comes out. And then the following week, you've got Turning Red from Pixar, which is going to be big, but it's like very different audiences, I would say. So that's not, you know, that's not stealing away from the Batman. But then after that, like Downton Abbey is March 18th. The Lost City is March 25th. Like, honestly, like, it's not like there's heavy hitters, you know, it's not like Dune coming out with in the thick of award season in October. There's a potential for this to be like a months long theatrical run where it's still like pulling in solid audiences. You know, just like looking at the release calendar, the only like name brand kind of thing, like Sonic 2 comes out April 8th, Fantastic Beasts Secrets of Dumbledore comes out April 15th. Neither of those would like hold a flame to the Batman, but still, like, that's a solid month and a half before you even encounter those. So I'm curious, like what your thoughts are on the decision to put the HBO Max release like that. I mean, it's still giving it plenty of time in theaters, but what's the takeaway there?
Well, first and foremost, like that's like the standard now. Like every studio is doing that. Some started
I would say every studio is doing it with like a $20 rental at home kind of thing, but like HBO Max, it's going to be free to stream for any subscriber.
Right. So like, for example, you know, when this pandemic situation kind of started to pivot, people were doing like, okay, we'll do 30-day windows, we'll do 40-day windows, all this other stuff. And then of course with 2021, HBO Max kind of like blew the doors off that with the day and date release strategy, which was pretty, you know, kind of absolutely unheard of and unprecedented. And with regards to the release date, so it's a 45-day window. It's over a month and a half. The vast majority of movies make, and I'm talking about big tentpole style movies, make the vast majority of their money in the first 3 weeks at the box office. So for example, Spider-Man just wrapped up its third weekend and it has I think $1.37 billion so far, and it's on pace to wrap up with about 1.7 billion. So that's clearly the majority of its money is already made, and that movie will continue to make money though into basically when the Batman comes out, I would say, and even Uncharted and Morbius, some of these other smaller ones. But yeah, so the Batman, and that was one of the key things. Remember, Doctor Strange was set to come out, I believe it was March 25th, so 3 weeks after the Batman. And that was going to be a much choppier situation where it was like, are these too close together? Is the Batman at risk of getting MCU, you know, blasted with such a big anticipated film that close? And then I remember, I think it was shortly after DC Fandom and that new Batman trailer came out, MCU delayed all their projects back, their film projects back, like basically one notch. So now Doctor Strange is coming out in May, and and as you've pointed out, the Batman completely has the run of the house in March and even in through the beginning of April. So it's gonna make it's gonna be the main attraction for sure, and that's why I'm so confident that it is going to be the biggest, with the exception of Spider-Man, film of the pandemic. I think it'll be a $1 billion hit. I think it'll be one of the maybe half a dozen or so $1 billion hits of 2022. Depending on COVID, etc. I think it's in a good position. I think the 45-day, I think that is going to be a huge boon for HBO Max, because as soon as 45 days after this thing releases, if people want to watch the Batman, where can you find it? On HBO Max, if you don't want to pay for a rental or wait for the Blu-ray to come out. That's going to be your avenue if you don't want to go to the theater. And I think that will be somewhat of a boost for their subs and kind of a big attraction that I'm sure they'll be using in advertising, etc. But it's going to be a very far removed, from what the day and date plan was, which was significantly affecting box office. I think it would be fair to say. I mean, look at what happened to their slate, with the exceptions of like Godzilla versus Kong and Dune. Those are the only two movies that made $100 million domestically for them out of like 17 films or something last year. I think the Batman would still be plenty fine if it did do day and date. But I think given that this is going to be the first Warner film post that plan, I think this is going to be a big booming success. Even though that is that shortened window, which again would be unheard of. I think previously, prior to the pandemic, it was like 90 days at least or something like that, before it would be available at home. So it's crazy. It's definitely different, but I don't think it's going to be a negative by any means, really.
Gotcha. Well, you know what is a negative? We're changing speeds here. We're hitting the NOS and going back to the Fast family. I know you've been following this eagerly, waiting on pins and needles for a response, but a couple of weeks ago, months at this point, we discussed Vin Diesel's Instagram post in which he called out his little brother, Dwayne Johnson, requesting him to return to the Fast franchise, fulfill his destiny as Luke Hobbs. Obviously, there has been beef between these two, and it led to The Rock spinning off into his own Fast franchise. And now Dwayne has broken his silence as he responded to Vin Diesel's post. In an interview, he said, "Vin's recent public post was an example of his manipulation, and I didn't like that he brought up his children in the post, as well as Paul Walker's death. Leave them out of it." And the kicker is that he says there is no chance he will return to the Fast franchise. Johnny, I need your instant reaction to this news.
This is literally exactly what I said. Basically, when the Vin Diesel thing came out, like, I mean, there was a couple of ways that you could, I guess, maybe interpret what Vin was doing.
I think we were both on this is not a good move by Vin train.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling that he would go ahead and do that if it truly was without any foresight, or like prior. Apparently what The Rock is saying is that, yeah, they talked about this already privately, so why would he go ahead? I guess he was just trying to apply pressure to him publicly.
Well, that's the thing, that trying to make, like, he's trying to like make it The Rock's fault that these movies that he's not coming back, like, yeah, that he is like this warm welcome, like allowing Dwayne to come back. But like, you can't make a villain out of one of the most like beloved people in America. Like, dude was literally the number one reason to love America on People's 100 list or whatever. So like, it's hard to kind of paint him as the bad guy here. But I like, as a huge fan of these movies and a fan of Dwayne, this is like sad to, like, I didn't expect him to come back or this tactic from Vin Diesel to work, but it's sad knowing that in 10 and 11 that it's not going to be that Hobbs won't be back, because he is a character who like came in and revitalized these movies with Fast Five and kind of pushed them by adding a whole new element to it. So that's a disappointment. But like, I mean, I think that Dwayne is in the right here, calling out Vin Diesel's bullshit and kind of standing strong with as much as I would like to see him come back, like, that would be kind of lame if he got little brothered by someone who's like 4 inches shorter than him and stands on boxes to look equal size in scenes. So, I think I'm proud of DJ for holding his ground here.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind for anyone listening that I'm not someone who has any investment in this franchise or
Don't lie to the folks at home.
I'm not even a fan. I like The Rock, I respect The Rock, but I'm not like a fan of his. Like honestly, I could probably count definitely on one hand the amount of Rock movies that I've seen. So like, but I do think he's of course in the right, and Vin Diesel is an ass. And he definitely shouldn't have done what he did. And I feel for the fans who maybe wanted to see The Rock return, if this is going to be the end of the franchise, at least the main franchise. But you just got to let it go. And I think, Rock's going to do what he wants to do. And this was not the way to try and get him to come back. So really Vin is he's kind of damaging his own reputation even more. But hey, these guys are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to be stupid. They're going to act silly as for lack of a better term. So let it ride. I'm not going to be seeing these movies anyway, but as far as that little stunt, I definitely don't like it.
Well, the last piece of news moving along here, this was a couple weeks ago at this point, but we wanted to touch on it. John Wick Chapter 4 was delayed almost an entire year, from May 27th of this year of 2022 until March 24th, 2023. This came out the day this news was released, the day that Matrix Resurrections came out. So highs and lows for Keanu fans. But at the time, I feel like we saw this news and it was like, oh no, is this about to be like, is this the start of the new delays with like different variants surging and kind of going back to no man's land? But nothing's really like followed suit. It wasn't like this started an onslaught. So I'm curious if it's even possible for them to like move it back if like things get better and don't like decline like it looked like for a little bit. So I don't know if we need to have like an in-depth discussion if you have any thoughts on this, but just a curious move there.
Well, yeah, I mean,
especially while Spider-Man was making $1 billion.
Well, what was its previous date again?
It was May 27th of this year, and now it moved to March 24th of 23.
All right, so let's take a look here.
Which is interesting because there was a time when Matrix Resurrections and John Wick 4 were supposed to come out on the same day.
I know, that's crazy to think about now, of course.
And now
so
it's
right
gonna be
now,
like over a year.
I'm looking at the slate here for May 2022. Doctor Strange comes out May 6th, so that's gonna dominate for about a month or so. Then you have Top Gun Maverick coming out on the 27th. So that was supposed to open up directly against it. And then a couple weeks after the 27th, when Wick was supposed to release against Top Gun Maverick, you have Jurassic World Dominion, which is going to be probably $1 billion hit at the box office. You have Lightyear the week after that. So maybe they were just looking to get some breathing room. Maybe they were really kind of getting concerned or like nervous about making money on it. But it does seem a little bit strange. I mean, it's a rated R, kind of a smaller, not a small budget by any means, but more of like a mid-budget, franchise or film. And it did seem like it was done or like ready for, like it would be coming out on time and be fine. But I don't know, maybe not. So it could be something we're not aware of, or it could be just as simple as wanting to get some space. But I think it is disappointing because it seemed like it was right around the corner and we had been waiting so long for it. There was 3 years between John Wick 1 and John Wick 2. There was 2 years between 2 and 3, and now there's going to be 4 years between 3 and 4. And of course, Keanu's getting older. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not saying that it definitely has anything to do with like the quality of the film by any means. I wasn't crazy about the last John Wick, but I am looking forward to more Keanu kicking ass, and the cast for this is good. But we'll see. I wasn't like devastated or anything. I wasn't like, oh no, I can definitely wait.
Right. I mean, I'm not like counting down the days until John Wick 4, but
yeah,
just it was a newsworthy event. So yeah. I think that's a good point on all of the other May 2022 releases. But
And maybe
like
one other small detail, and this might be thinking a little too deep into it, but Matrix Resurrections just came out, which is a big action film starring Keanu. Didn't get the best reception, isn't making a ton of money. Maybe they don't want to oversaturate the Keanu image at the moment, and right now his image is like relatively associated with a relatively not well received film. So maybe they just want, if you could get another year of time, people are gonna be like, oh, I want to see like the new John Wick, I want more Keanu Reeves. Whereas right now it's like, okay, well,
right,
Matrix didn't go so well, is John Wick not going to be good now? You know what I mean? I think there might be that element to it as well, but
makes sense. I think we've investigated that to its full extent there. Let's get into the beef of the episode. Top 10 movies of 2021. We are looking back on the best films of the year. As always, like we do with our lists, with our countdowns, we'll be alternating back and forth, going down from 10 to 1 as we walk through our movies. I know my list, I saw 63 2021 releases this year. Johnny, what was your number? Do you have it handy? Break out the old letterbox. Let's find out. But
so I saw for
me,
2021, I saw 61.
Okay, so that big push at the end brought us pretty close by you. So we're drawing from a similar pool, I would say.
Yes, for sure.
But let's get started. Number 10. And I think what we'll do here, just for the sake of time and discussion, if there's something on a list that, for example, like my number 9 is your number 10. So we can both just talk about it together rather than talking about it once and then again when it gets to the other person's list. So why don't you kick us off, Johnny? Let's talk number 10. What's on the list here?
What's on tap? So it's going to be James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. We hit on this, we talked about Peacemaker quite a bit earlier in the show, but this was, for me, the first blockbuster, like really of the pandemic. I mean, I liked Tenet. I'm a fan of that film more than most, but this was the one that really wowed me right off the bat, and really, I thought, did a great job, especially for comic book movies, because I wasn't so hot on Black Widow, and even after the Suicide Squad came out, wasn't so hot on some of the other films like Shang-Chi and Eternals. But this one I thought was a great, refreshing entry in the genre, super rated R with violence and profanity and all types of stuff. It was just kind of irreverent, like I said, and fun, and the action was great, and the designs were great. It just had a great pulpy feel to it that you don't really find in a lot of movies these days, let alone $150 million blockbuster, comic book movie. So it was refreshing, and the cast was exceptional. I thought it was very funny. I thought they had great chemistry, and it just all came together for me at the end. And I this is one of the films I watched the most this year. I've seen it 4 times. I have the 4K Blu-ray, which is a beautiful entry in the format. I would highly recommend that. Zach, what are your thoughts on this film?
Yeah, this was, like I said, number 9 for me on my list. So a big fan of this as well. When it comes to comic book movies this year, I think this was the second best overall. And we had plenty among the 4 Marvel movies and this and different Marvel TV shows. We had Zack Snyder's Justice League as well. But this was one of the very best. And it, to start with Suicide Squad and kind of save the face there, which was we've talked about this in past episodes, how excited we were for that movie and the idea of like a villain centric movie, and to talk about how much of a dud that was, and then to save the face here and deliver on the concept that we all hoped for it at that point. Like, this goes to show that you don't need A-list character. It doesn't have to be the Justice League. It doesn't have to be Iron Man and Spider-Man and the biggest superheroes. Like, you can get Peacemaker, you can get Ratcatcher 2, Polka Dot Man, King Shark, like all of these people that, unless you're a big comics reader, like, you don't necessarily even know they exist. You don't know who they are, what their powers are. And there's, like, by the end of the movie, like, I'm ready to go to war with Ratcatcher too. Like this is, I love these characters. I love Milton, my guy, RIP, pour one out for Milton. But the you don't have to have like that A-list if you have someone in charge who is competent and able to know what to do with these characters. Like James Gunn proved that obviously with the Guardians of the Galaxy, making that such a success when it's B to C tier like heroes in regard to like the broad general public and their familiarity with comic books, and to make those beloved characters, and then do the same here. Obviously a darker spin here, more violence, more profanity, everything to the absolute max. And that was so fun, just to be able to see this in a theater. Things at this point in the year had gotten a lot better, so it was a good theater audience to check this out with. So great all around. The Suicide Squad, I had that 4K as well, and it's got some really great bonus features as well, like really diving into James Gunn and the creation of the movie. So that I definitely, if anyone has made it through the year without seeing the Suicide Squad, Johnny and I both highly recommend it. So that is number 10 for Johnny, number 9 for me, and now number 10 for me is Red Rocket. Johnny talked about it a little bit earlier, and the biggest thing there, Simon Rex making a comeback in this movie. You know, when I wrote my little capsule about this, I was talking about it's an A24 movie, so like it's obviously like within that subgenre, and the best way to describe this movie is the love child of Uncut Gems and the Florida Project. Like it's Chris Bogosian, Sean Baker who did the Florida Project, so that makes sense. But it's got like that sort of slice of life style where you're just kind of like going through. There isn't like there's a plot, but it's not like let's get from point A to point B and like this is the mission that we're on. It's kind of like meandering and just moseying through life. But then it's also got this Uncut Gems like frenetic energy and chaos and just like despicable aura around it, that makes it the opposite of something so tender as the Florida Project. So really just meshing those two together. It's funny. It's got, like you said, it's disgusting and gross what happens in this movie, but it's still, I think it's something like we talked about with Succession. Like, you know that all of these people are horrible, but you still feel compelled by them because that's how you know that the performance is so good, that the writing is so good. So this was my number 10, Red Rocket. I think it's still in theaters probably. It just came out. I saw it at Film Fest 919, but it hit theaters early December, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. So number 10 for Johnny is the Suicide Squad. Number 10 for me is Red Rocket. Number 9 for me is the Suicide Squad. What is number 9 for you, Johnny?
Yes. So my number 9 is going to be Drive My Car, which I mentioned earlier in the show. I just watched, kind of cramming it in at the end of the year. Certainly one of the best non-English language films of the entire year. It is it's 3 hours long, as I mentioned. So you have to commit. But if you do, and you should, it is it can be entrancing at times. It is somewhat of a slow burn. It doesn't have, for a 3-hour movie, it's not like there's like The Godfather or anything like that, where there's some violence and like a lot of political like maneuvering and things like that. Like for this, it is simple, very, I would say, narratively it's not dense when it comes to the actual story. It's plot light, it's not plot heavy. But when it comes to like the thematics and kind of piecing together what certain things mean in context with one another, it's like one of those movies where it's not like a passive experience. Like you have to be thinking about, okay, what does that scene mean? What does this piece of dialogue mean in relation to this and what this character is doing here? And it gives you a great trio of performances as well, especially from the lead. I thought that just the acting was some of the best of the entire year, one of the best ensemble casts, and it's just it's very different from almost anything else that I saw this year, and I think that was great too. It's just refreshing. And Ryusuke Hamagachi, he is a very talented filmmaker. I'm very keen on checking out his other films now. He had another film released this past year as well that I want to take a look at, And I think he even might be having a film coming out this year as well. I think he might be having something set for Cannes Film Festival. So yeah, give it a look. Just you have to have the right mindset. Wait for the right time when you can commit the 3 hours and commit the right mindset to it. But if you do, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
I have not seen that. I don't know if that's a surprise. But I know that you love it. Josh loves it. Jake loves it. So I have been told that the other movie that you referenced, The Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, Josh told me to watch that one first, and then that will inform whether or not I would enjoy this one.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten around to either yet, so we'll see.
The one last
it
thing
has
I would
the
say
stamp of
about it-
approval of three of the four inside the film room boys. So
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about it is to maybe try and convince people to go ahead and give it a shot. Is it's one of those movies where, again, it really asks you and makes you think about, like, and this is going to sound very like cliche and oversimplified probably, but like your actual life and the way you go about your life and your relationships and the way you engage with other people, whether it's friend or foe, and people in between. It'll offer a perspective that is not necessarily unique, but it'll make you consider the way that you engage with people and your relationships. A lot of this movie is just about relationships, both romantic, sexual, and otherwise, and that I thought was very intriguing. And that was really those ideas is what kept me engaged with it for the entire runtime and didn't leave me disappointed by any means.
Well, there you have it. Johnny gives it his stamp of approval. Like I said, Jake and Josh do as well. To be determined on me, but moving on in our list, number 8 for me is 9 Days. This movie came out. It's been around for a long time, it seems like, because this was in, I think, Sundance 2020, which was obviously January of last year. I guess 2 years ago at this point. But then it came out wide in July of 2021. So it was a long wait. This is a movie that I had been aware of for a really long time. And it's almost as if you took Pixar's Soul and made it into like a more adult live action movie, because it's the same sort of like ethereal, like you're in this world before life. But it's a fantastic directorial debut from Edson Oda. It's got Winston Duke starring in it, a great cast, Zazie Beetz in there as well, and Tony Hale, Bill Skarsgård, I think, is the Skarsgård brother involved. But just really, really, like, you talked about like making you think about how you approach your own life and stuff. It's similar here, in the sense that like it's just like one of those movies that makes you contemplate things, as kind of this guy is trying to figure out which of these souls in this 9-day period deserves to go and live a life on Earth. It's kind of like his process as he's deciding which one gets this chance. But it's a beautiful movie in both like the narrative and emotional aspects, but also just like the visuals. It was shot in Utah, and it's like this house in the middle of like a open, not desert, like it's like a salt flat, and just some truly stunning visuals. And have you seen the movie Her, the Joaquin movie Her?
Yes.
I want to say it's Spike Jonze. He had like an executive producer role or something here, because while I was watching this, I was like, I haven't like experienced a movie like this that just like, to me, Her has like a very distinct feeling that I can like it's like the amalgamation of like the movie itself and the music and the feeling that it makes me have. And it's just like, I associate that with Her. Like, I don't know how else to describe that. And I was watching this movie and I had a very similar like thought process and experience with it. And then I look up afterwards and I was like, I don't know how much of an impact he had, but he had some sort of connection to this movie, and that was enough for me to be like, okay, that is why I feel this way about this movie. Like, it's just very 9 days. So it's a little bit out there, but I would definitely recommend seeking this out if you haven't seen it yet. Some great performances, and I'm really excited to see what, like I said, directorial debut from Edson Oda. I'm excited to see what's next for him. So that's number 8 for me, 9 days.
That is one early on in the year I was very much looking forward to and wanted to check out, and I just never got around to doing it. It's
like the way that it's Sony Pictures Classic, and those are so hard. I saw a tweet today that was like, if you see this logo before a movie, because there's like all of the ones where it's like, if you see this logo before a movie, you know shit's about to get real. But it was, if you see this logo before a movie, you know that it's going to be impossible to find this, and you'll have like a 2-day window to ever watch it. And that was the case here. Like, it was a screening link. I don't think it was, I can't remember a time when I ever saw this as an option in a theater. So I don't know how people should go about watching it, but they should at some point.
Yeah, that's just distribution for you in 2021 and 2022. My choice for number 8 is going to be Titan. I feel like I don't have to say a whole lot about this movie at this point, and the less said, the better, I think, for your experience. Won the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival last year. It was a huge news story in the film world, and that pretty much got it on everyone's list. I finally got to see it for myself. I believe it was in October. And it's kind of like a horror adjacent film, so it kind of fit into my October Halloween watching. But it is probably the most, apart from Dune and the No Way Home times when I went to see the theater or went to the theater to see those films, the most memorable experience I had in the theater all of last year, because me and my girlfriend both almost passed out watching this movie, and I literally had to get up and leave and go get some water and like buy water and bring it back to the theater so that we would not like die, because this movie like was so like viscerally bothersome on like a physical level, and I but that it made like it was so worth, like we almost left. Like I was like, should we just leave? Like this is not like conducive to an enjoyable experience. And she stuck it out and I stuck it out with her, and we both ended up like loving the movie and thinking how great it was. And I'm glad we made that choice to stay. So I'm not going to go into why or what parts exactly were kind of putting us on edge, but it's unlike anything you will see last year, unlike anything you will see in most years, I would say. There's a little something for, like, I don't want to say everyone, although that's probably not entirely true. But there are layers to this film, and it is very, like I think I said this in the group chat after I saw it. I was like, this would be a great like film if you're in film school to like write a paper about, or like to do an analysis of, because I think the screenplay is just very well done, and of course on a technical level, it's pretty much flawless. I mean, there's a lot going on here visually, and all of it works. I don't think any of it comes off as bad or hokey or anything. So even despite the premise, which again won't go into if you don't know it yet, but just know it's a pretty hard R. There's some graphic violence. There's some, plenty of nudity, plenty of sexual things happening in this movie. And it goes in directions I wasn't expecting, and it is genuinely like tender and heartwarming. Again, that's something I wasn't expecting. So, Zach, you had a similar experience, and we did a great episode on this where we went into a lot of detail and reviewed it, spoilers included for part of it. So if you're interested in that, if you haven't, if you've seen the movie, or if you want to get a better idea of what we're talking about, definitely go back out in our history and check that podcast episode, because that's a good one.
Agreed. Yeah, this made my top 25. Didn't quite make the cut for top 10. But I definitely echo everything you said when it comes to just the overall viewing experience and how it felt to watch this. I did not nearly pass out, but I can see how someone would experience that. So I'm glad that I enjoyed it, not to the same extent that you did, but I'm interested to see that's back-to-back foreign films on your list. What a man of culture.
Hey, and spoiler alert, it's not
It's
not
not
the
the
last.
last one. I didn't know if I could give that away. I figured that was something you could do. Number 7 on the list for me is A Quiet Place Part 2. It's no secret that I love the first movie. I love A Quiet Place. It was my number 1 movie of 2018. And here we are finally in 2021 getting this sequel. I have mentioned this many times on the podcast. I was a week away from seeing this back in 2020 because there were people who, not a week, I was a few days away from seeing this in 2020. There were people who did see it in 2020 and then everything shut down. and so people had to sit on their review for over a year. But this came out over the summer and it was May 28th. It was really the first big blockbuster, I would say, to welcome us back to theaters. You know, we saw, I guess, Mortal Kombat, I guess that would be considered a blockbuster. But again, at the same time, I saw it in theaters, but it was on HBO Max as well. This was like, we're back nationwide in theaters. And for this to be, A Quiet Place, that was such a theatrical movie. The experience of going to a purely quiet theater and sitting there with bated breath and being scared to breathe, being scared to eat your popcorn. Obviously a little different here with the second one as the world expands. There's more noise here. It's not just the same shtick over and over, which I don't want to call it a shtick because it was great in the first movie. But I remember when I was writing about this saying that it would have been so easy for them to do that, just to copy and paste what made the first one successful, cash in on a sequel and ride the name recognition and everything there. But instead, there was a lot of diversion from that, opening up the world, bringing in new characters, putting Millicent Simons in charge as the daughter, making her the leading character now. Obviously, you've still got Emily Blunt there, but really letting her take the reins as a young actress. It was a brilliant move by John Krasinski, again, directing this. And I haven't done it yet, which is kind of hypocritical because the first thing I said when I finished this was like, I can't wait for it to come out on physical so that I can watch. It's called Part 2. And that was like something I very distinctly remember like emphasizing, that Part 1, Part 2 versus like just a sequel. Like these movies need to be watched back to back, and someone's going to hold me to that and make me do that in 2022. Because it's just like, it's like in seam, in stride with the first movie to kind of continue on the story. So number 7 for me, A Quiet Place Part 2. I know you weren't as sold on the first one. I'm pretty sure you enjoyed this one, right? Did we discussed this? We had a podcast.
I definitely liked this more than the original.
I'll allow it. I appreciate that support.
And it was helped by the experience of, I saw this on my trip to New York in May.
Oh yeah,
and,
the biggest IMAX screen.
The biggest IMAX screen in the country. So yeah, that definitely helped, but I thought it was genuinely a good improvement over the first, which I was pretty cool on.
Well, what is number 7 on your list, Johnny?
Shiva Baby. It is a great and I'm not going to say a lot about this one either, but it is a great comedy. It is hilarious. It is also a great anxiety inducing film, similar to a great comparison. And this is something you mentioned previously, but Uncut Gems, I think works as a comparison here. The use of sound, it's really well done for such a small film. It's an adaptation of a short film that the director, which I'm going to pull up her name here in just a second, but the director did a short film. Emma Seligman did a short film for her thesis project at NYU's film school. And it was a short version of this. And then for her to do what she did and expand it like she did into this great, very swift feature film. It is not very long, which is another great boon to it, I think, and a lot of people are kind of hesitant with longer films these days, or complaining about longer films. This movie is only 78 minutes long. The budget is like $200,000. Not a lot of people have seen it, unfortunately. And it's a real bummer because I think this is easily one of the best films of the year. It not only is it hilarious, but there's some really genuinely great emotional undercurrents with regards to family, again, relationships, friendships, romantic and otherwise. So I can't recommend enough. I also thought Rachel Sennott was one of the best standout breakout performances of the year. And Molly Gordon is very good in it as well. The whole cast is really good. It's a lot of lesser known actors, but they all do really well. So give it a look. It's on HBO Max. If you have HBO Max, this is one of the best, 78 minutes you can spend on that app, especially with regards to 2021 releases. So definitely give it a look because it will surprise you. When I watched it, I just threw it on kind of on a whim with my girlfriend one night. It was late at night. We wanted something short, and we were both very impressed with it and happy with it. So, and I'm looking forward to watching it again when I do get the chance.
Another one I have not seen, but at 78 minutes, that is tempting. And especially if it's got the Sobchak stamp of approval. Number 6 on my list is Spider-Man No Way Home. We don't have to dive too deep into it, considering we just did last episode and it's still fresh on everyone's mind. But I said earlier, Suicide Squad was my second best comic book movie. This was the number 1 of the year for me as far as comic book properties as a whole, TV and film. So absolutely lived up to all the hype that we had put upon this movie. Not a single disappointing moment. And on top of the fan service, it delivered a ton of really great development for, past Spideys and for Tom Holland as an MCU Spider-Man. So I'm excited to see everything that is in store for the next trilogy. And this did an excellent job of preparing me and keeping its hooks in me for the future of Spider-Man. So number 6 for me is No Way Home.
Yeah. Again, I totally, that is, so spoiler alert here. My number 5 pick is No Way Home. And so I'm not really going to add anything to what you just said, because you said it all. And we did go into a lot of detail on that in another great recent episode where we reviewed that. Went into spoilers on that as well. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, give that a look. My number 6 film is Come On, Come On. Saw this at FilmFest 919. So shout out to them for giving us that access early. I wrote a review on the film that you can check out on the website that I had the pleasure of writing up and kind of diving into this one. It is, again, a smaller film. It's from A24. I feel like it's been overlooked quite a bit, unfortunately, especially with regards to awards this year. Mike Mills got an Oscar nomination for 20th Century Women, writing that screenplay a few years ago. I haven't seen that film, but I thought this screenplay was very well done. His direction is great. It looks gorgeous. One of the best looking films of the year, with some amazing black and white photography of LA, New York, New Orleans. It's a really pleasant experience. Joaquin Phoenix, this is not a role where he is a chameleon, where he transforms into a complete monster or like Joker, or he turns into a completely different physical form like you were never really here. It's definitely it's basically, and he's not playing himself by any means, because I know how he is in real life in interviews and stuff, but I thought this is one of his most tender and open and just performances where you can watch him and it's all there on his face, and it's not just something where it's going to be outlandish. It's just a very simple performance, but he is of course one of the greatest living actors for my money, and this is one of my favorite performances of his. I mean, he never really gives a bad performance, and I thought he was really, really good here. And the one who really steals the show, though, is Woody Norman, who is a young actor. I think he was around 10 years old when they filmed this. He is one of the breakout performers of this year, easily one of my best supporting performances, especially for for labeling actors. He definitely is in there for me. And I was he is a force. I cannot wait to see what he does next, because this is one of the best child performances I have seen. And again, similar to Shiva Baby, this is one of those where there's a lot of great humor in this movie, but there's a lot of emotional moments and stuff. I definitely got teared up and cried a bit, especially toward the end. Just the connections, the relationships, and the way they develop it, I thought was really well done. So please check this out. Can't recommend it enough. Give it a look, whether it's at home or if you can find it in the theater anywhere, please do.
Yeah, another one that I was able to see. I liked it quite a bit. Didn't make my list, but Woody Norman did get my vote for best supporting actor. So
Mhm.
I'm with you there 100%. Number 5 for me. Speaking of movies that went underappreciated, Swan Song. This just came out a couple weeks ago, December 17th in theaters and on Apple TV Plus. I feel like it was very under the radar coming out on the same day. Not that they were related at all, but coming out on the same day as Spider-Man, right before the Matrix, right before the holidays. You know, it kind of just got lost in the shuffle. It's Mahershala Ali finally in a leading role for the first time on the big screen, and he's not only leading this the leading actor, but he's the leading actors, playing across from himself, two different versions of a character. It's like a low-key sci-fi movie, almost like a Black Mirror type plot, in the sense that it's like this man with a terminal illness, and there's been like a clone of him made basically, and he's transferring his consciousness into the other one. And it's kind of like this ethical movie, this emotional familial drama as he's having to say goodbye, knowing that, you know, he'll still be around, but it won't be him. There's comedy, there's romance, there's like I said, the kind of sci-fi element to it. And it's just this movie, like you see the trailer and it looks so heavy, and I wanted this to be something that was just like soul crushingly heavy, because it just seemed like that emotional, like the power is so there. But luckily it wasn't. It did, like I said, all of those other genres that it blended in. The first two acts are like a very good balance of everything, and then man, does it hit home in the third act. The last 30 minutes I cried at 3 separate moments. It's just
Goodness.
it's a very sweet, tender, like it's like heartwarming but heartbreaking at the same time movie. So, and like we all know what Mahershala Ali is capable of. So when you put him on screen and let him lead and let him do it twice, it's just greatness waiting to happen. And Naomi Harris is in here as well. She's got chemistry with absolutely everyone. So if you haven't seen it yet, please, I don't know if it's still in theaters, but Apple TV Plus, it's there. Check it out. You won't regret it. So that is number 5 for me, Swan Song. Full review on the website as well. As Johnny was plugging his, I'll plug mine. If you need to break it down more in depth, check that out. But that is number 5. Johnny, your number 5 was No Way Home. What is number 4 for you?
Number 4. So yeah, we have The Power of the Dog on Netflix. Again, this is one where I feel like the less you know, the better. I went into it. I knew the cast. I knew Jane Campion at the helm, and Johnny Greenwood, one of my favorite composers, scoring it. Ari Wegner as well. Cinematography. She is just crushing it. She did Zola, which is, I'll give an honorable mention to, one of my other favorite films of this year. And the visuals of that movie compared to this are just so drastically different. She just crushes it out of the park. They filmed this in New Zealand, so you get some outstanding establishing shots, landscape shots. It's a gorgeous movie, but the interiors and close-ups are just as impressive. The score, probably my second of the year behind Dune in Hans Zimmer's score. This is the score I prefer it to Spencer, actually, which I thought Spencer was good. But yeah, this is Benedict Cumberbatch is a powerhouse in this movie. Probably my best male lead performance of the year. If I had, I think that's what I'm going to end up voting for. I thought he was just unbelievably impressive, and just disappeared into this. And there's some great supporting turns as well from Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, and Cody Smith-McPhee, especially. And it's a dark, slow burn. It's just kind of right up in my wheelhouse. Visually impressive, everything that I look for. And I love Westerns as well. And like, this is a modern film, so it's a modern Western in that sense, but it is still set, far into the past, in Montana. And I just thought that this was, again, we don't get a lot of Westerns, I would say, and especially Westerns that are this high profile, they get this much praise and are, really running through the award circuit. So I would give it a look. Again, brace yourself for a slower burn. It's not a terribly long movie, but it does develop slowly. But I was really blown away where the story ended up going and how it resolved. And I thought it was just a wonderful little kind of twisty narrative. So again, give it a look. I just think technically across the board, one of the best films of the year, right up there. If we're talking technical attributes, this would be second, really, I think second to Dune for me. And I would say West Side Story is up there as well. I think those are the three real technical juggernauts this year that I was most blown away by. And the performances, again, once to elevate that to the level where it is 4 on my list.
I definitely can get behind your sentiment as far as the technical aspects go. It was a beautiful movie to look at, some great performances. I agree with you on Benedict Cumberbatch. Didn't hit everything for me as far as narrative. The slow burn was a little too slow for me. So I was more mixed on this and did not make my list, obviously. But I can see, obviously, it's getting a ton of hype, a ton of praise, and has some serious legs going into Oscar season. So it is not, I definitely see why this is number 4 on your list. But number 4 for me, dipping my toes into the foreign pool here to join you, Petite Maman, one that I saw and spoke about back when we were talking about Film Fest 919. This was the follow-up for Celine Sciamma. It was the follow-up to Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Talking about short movies, it's 72 minutes. But man, does that pack a punch in 72 minutes. It's this beautiful, tender story about a child and her mother. It's a coming of age story. It's a story of childhood innocence. And it kind of takes these like super profound, grand topics and narrows it down into a way that is easily digestible for the audience, and like basically putting it into terms for an 8-year-old protagonist, which speaking of childhood acting, the Sanz sisters, Gabrielle and Josephine Sanz, they're twin sisters who play the mother and daughter here. And it's some truly great stuff. Again, 72 minutes. You don't need to go too far in depth here, because it's just such a powerful story that Celine Sciamma is able to tell things by like within a single frame. There's so much packed in that she doesn't need like a monologue or a soliloquy or anything to kind of set the scene or to introduce a character or something. A lot of this stuff is just able to kind of be told through the nuances of the character or a scene or anything. So this was one that I saw and I immediately like fell in love with it. And it's still, I think, I can't remember if it's out in theaters or not at this point, but it's being released by Neon. So be on the lookout for it, because it's brilliant. Did you get the chance to check this out? I know you were trying to squeeze it in, but I don't know if it made the cut for you.
I squeezed it in, but it did not make the cut for me. This was like one of the very last films that I watched before we had to submit our nominations. I think it was actually the last one. I knew it was very short. I knew it was brisk. I really liked Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I thought that was a great, queer romance story with some amazing cinematography, and I wasn't as high on it. I didn't think it was one of the best films like of all time, of the decade, or of the year when it came out in 2019. But this, I thought, I don't know if I just wasn't in the right mood, or maybe I was too tired or something, but I could not I was never gripped by it like I was hoping to be, or even just as much as Portrait, which I thought the main relationship of that and the main conflict I thought was pretty intriguing and pretty engaging. Whereas here I was just like, I think a lot of people have been praising it for how quaint it is and just quiet and kind of like tender and slow and just simple, this relationship. And when this story that's kind of unfolding, even though there are some interesting, almost like genre elements to it. But for me, I never was like on board really. I feel like I got left at the train station when this thing took off. So maybe I'll give it another chance down the line. I still haven't seen Portrait a second time since I saw it the first time. Maybe Sciamma is just like not a filmmaker that I really like resonate with, maybe. But I'm certainly looking forward to whatever she is going to end up doing after this, because I'm sure it'll be just as praised and running around the circuit as this one is.
Well, that was our number 4s. Number 3, keep it going, Johnny. Keep it going across the pond.
All right, so this top 3, this is easily my top 3 of the year. These are the 3 films of the last 12 months that I gave 5 out of 5 scores to. And this first one I ended up settling for number 3 is The Worst Person in the World. A lot of people have not seen this film yet because it is not in theaters. It is not out in theaters
until February.
Until February. But it is on the award circuit right now. It is eligible. Getting nominated. Thankfully, I'm very, very happy that NCFCA, where we voted on last week, got it in for Best Actress, for Best Film overall, and for Best Foreign Picture. So I am, I really, man, I cannot praise this film enough. It is so funny. It is very well written, incredibly performed, especially by, and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, but Renata Reinsve. She is fantastic as the lead. She is, again, my breakout performance of the year. I would say my best lead performance of the year, maybe across the board, but from female performers at least. She was excellent. She is I'm excited to see what she does next. And then the 2 supporting actors as well. The 2, because it's like a trio that really anchored the film. And I thought all 3 of them were very good separately, but also together. And it was really the supporting performance that really stood out for me that I nominated when we did our voting was Anders Danielsen Lee. I thought he was excellent as like one of the most important relationships in her life that she kind of goes through and returns to. And it was just, not only was it very funny and very like relatable. I'm not 30 yet. I just turned 25, and her character is kind of going through like this, like not even like a midlife crisis, but like a quarter life crisis or like early life crisis. And I can definitely resonate with that, especially given the last year, like what I've gone through, like personally and like with work and relationships and all these other things like school and just like what you want to achieve and what you end up achieving and what you think you can achieve like down the line and what you're planning to do. There's just so much in a pandemic world as well. I think you can't understate that enough. It's just very relatable content. And emotionally, this film just kicked my ass. Like similar to your experience, what it sounds like with Swan Song, or the last 30 minutes of this was just like pretty much not even like broken up necessarily, but like full on like sobbing during the last like 30 minutes or so, where some things happen and go down, and I was just very pleased. It's like a rom-com, but it's like a dark rom-com, like a dark comedy, but like with a lot of romantic elements.
Right.
And it's kind of unusual in that regard. It's not your typical rom-com by any stretch. And the humor really works for me, and it just was it really resonated. And I can't wait. I haven't brought myself to watch it again. I really want to watch. When I rewatch it, I want to show it to someone, like maybe my girlfriend or something. But I really can't recommend it. I will definitely, if I get the chance. Who knows what distribution is going to look like for this? But when it does release, hopefully in February, I'm going to make the chance. I'm going to take the chance and make the effort to go and see it in a theater. And I would recommend that everyone do it as well. And it's poised to get a Criterion Collection release this year. Absolutely 100% stamp of approval. Recommend buying that. I will be buying it day one. That's probably a way that a lot of people are going to get a chance to see this. So give that a look whenever they announce that date for that.
Yeah, this was one. I am a big fan of this as well. It was number 13 on my list, so just outside the top 10. Would have gotten an honorable mention. But I'm with you. I voted for it, or I nominated it for foreign film. I nominated it in my or I nominated, again, I'm going to avoid saying the actress's name, for lead actress, for breakout star. So a lot of respect, a lot of love for this movie. And this is one that I saw at Film Fest 919. And I'm curious, I'm interested I haven't watched it since then. But that was like my 4th or 5th movie at this point. And so like I really enjoyed it at the time, but I'm curious, knowing how much you love it, how much Josh loves it, just everybody seems to love it. Like to be able to watch it with like fresh eyes, not in the midst of a film festival, I'm curious to see how much more I would enjoy it. So I definitely want to revisit this to see if it would, like, I can't change my top 10, but if it would be like a retroactive re-ranking to see if that scoots up from 13 to make it into the top 10. But a lot of love for Worst Person in the World. It was a ton of fun. I'm really hoping that a lot more people can see it. Otherwise, I'll just be sharing around this neon screener book. Just kidding. Don't stop sending me screeners, please. But number 3 for me was a movie that we've talked about on the podcast before, No Time to Die. James Bond's final adventure with Daniel Craig in the leading role. I loved this movie. I thought it was fantastic. We talked, again, if you want the full breakdown, you can go listen to the podcast from October. But after a very lengthy wait, lots of delays, at one point, me saying just to throw it on Apple or Amazon or something. This was more than worth the wait to see it on the big screen. It was an epic send-off. I know that we've discussed the issues that it has with the villain, with Rami Malek, just in general being the weakest part. But, you know, I nominated Ana de Armas as a supporting actress because I thought she was so, like, obviously her role wasn't huge, but like when I look back on the year and think about people who benefited a movie so much by them being in a supporting role, like she's one of my top for the way that she comes in as Paloma, and just absolutely like crushes her 14 minutes and then pieces out. But I thought it was a very poignant, epic conclusion for Daniel Craig. He delivered another great performance. It was a great action movie, and it continued the trend of one good movie, one bad movie, one good movie, one bad movie, one good movie for the Daniel Craig saga of James Bond. So number 3 for me, No Time to Die. Johnny, let's get into 1 and 2 because we are aligned on both of these. Number 2, what is it?
Hell yeah, man. Number 2, Judas and the Black Messiah. And this was a film, came out early, and this is gonna maybe it'll confuse people because this came out and qualified. They adjusted their qualifications for last award season. So Judas and Black Messiah, even though it had a Sundance premiere in January, I think, and then it was released in theaters in February, it was eligible for last year. Daniel Kaluuya, of course, famously won the Oscar for his incredible supporting performance as Fred Hampton. But this film is on our list here at number 2 for each of us. And when I watched this, I watched it via the Sundance portal. I paid for a ticket to watch it, and I was so glad I did. And I went and paid for a ticket. I went and saw it in theaters, supported it in theaters. I loved seeing it on the big screen because it is a gorgeous film. I mean, the cinematography it's like a throwback to like the 70s, like crime, like thrillers. Like it really gives me it has that, and it's the setting, of course, because this is set in 69, I think. And so it has that kind of going for it already. But I was really pleased with just the cast, the whole ensemble. And as soon as I watched this, like I said, via Sundance, I think I said it in the chat. I was like, this is probably not even going to get close to being topped as my number 1 movie of the year until like for the next like 6 or 7 months until Dune comes out, essentially. And lo and behold, we'll get to that in a moment, but that did pan out. And this movie, it has everything that I want in a movie. It has the dramatic, especially for a movie like this, it has the dramatic elements. It has amazing performances, not only from Daniel Kaluuya, but Lakeith Stanfield. And it's really those two who carry the movie like on their backs, I would say, most significantly, because the stories kind of are interwoven and like flip back and forth. Fred Hampton is Daniel Kaluuya, as I said, and then William O'Neill is played by Lakeith Stanfield, and he is the FBI informant. And this is all based on a true story. And then, of course, Dominique Fishback plays the love interest for Fred Hampton and the mother of his child. And so there is a lot going on. And I love as well how this is this is a story that a lot of people I feel like weren't really familiar with prior to this movie. And what I loved is I feel like it didn't, like, somehow, I don't know how they managed to do it, especially through Warner Brothers, but I feel like it did a very good job of not whitewashing the story or like oversimplifying it, or like not going into the true ugliness and like the depth of what actually was going on at this period of time in history and what still goes on today in the United States with regards to the FBI and the US government and the Black Panther Party and a number of other socioeconomic equations. There's a lot going on the surface and underneath the surface. If you want to learn more, I think it gives you a great kind of baseline or template, and then you can go and you should go and read like other books based on Fred Hampton's life and this whole story. And on top of the story and the historical elements and everything that it gets right, technically, like I said, the cinematography is gorgeous. Like I said, the coloring, the filmic quality to it, it reminds me of Michael Chapman's work from like I said, the 70s, like Taxi Driver with Scorsese and some of those other works. It really worked for me on pretty much every level. The score, which unfortunately was not eligible for the Oscar last year because of, I think it was using some preconceived music. I thought the score was one of my favorites of the year easily. And just the sound I thought was really great. All the elements of the period with costume and hair and makeup and things like that were really great. So across the board, I was astonished that this got as much recognition as it did at the Oscars. I was so happy. I think I ended up getting like half a dozen nominations, including for cinematography. Sean Bobbitt, who had never been nominated, somehow got in finally. Screenplay got in, Will Burson, Shaka King, and the Lucas brothers. It just across, and then Daniel Kaluuya winning finally, I thought was just so well earned and such a great moment. So Zach, I'm sure you'll have your own thoughts here to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of basically everything that you said, echoing all of that. This is a movie that it's like you said, kind of like in a weird spot just because of the release date, the qualifications for last year's awards. But then when it comes to NCFCA, our voting includes everything in 2021. So it was we were trying to push for it this year. It didn't really get, I feel like people forgot about it because of the kind of confusion there, and it just coming out so long ago. So it didn't really get as much love here, but it got the real love that it needed at the Oscars, like you said. So I can't complain about that. If you had to choose between an NCFCA nomination and an Oscar nomination, I think we know which one is the higher honor there. But yeah, I mean, stellar performances. The Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, Dominique Fishback, Jesse Plemons, even with some truly like year's best performances. And it's heartbreaking, it's infuriating, it's upsetting, but it's so like I knew of the story going into it, but I didn't know nearly any of the details that it tells you. And I watched it with my brother, who was completely unfamiliar with the story. So like you said, didn't tone anything down, didn't pull any punches, and it really just like hits home with everything that it's trying to convey. So if you have, it's back on HBO Max at this point. If you haven't checked it out, please go and do so, because it is one of the best movies that you'll see. So
HBO Max, if you haven't seen it yet, absolutely check it out there. And I want to hit on that as well, as you kind of just alluded to. Like, this is one of the movies, like the few movies that I've pretty much ever seen, I would say, where like I was genuinely like pissed off, like angry, like as hell watching it. Because it's based on a true story, so it's not even like you're just getting angry at like fictional characters doing things that you don't like, but like you can't get over that this happened. And then of course the emotional elements as well. Like it definitely got me in the end with how things go down. And I thought it was just, again, wonderfully depicted, and the way it all was portrayed and resolved at the end, and the way it kind of leaves it, I thought was done well, especially for like a biopic type movie. I just thought that, again, hit all the right notes. So if you haven't, as Zach said, go check it out.
Well, then there was one, Johnny, And if anyone has listened to this podcast before, I think they should know by this point what that movie is. But if they were still confused, why don't you enlighten them?
All right, late. Listeners, listen in. Perk your ears up. It's Denis Villeneuve's Dune, Part 1. This was my most anticipated film. Again, like I talked about the Batman earlier in the show. Of the last few years, this was the one I was most looking forward to. Blade Runner 2049 like blew my mind, changed my life, on top of what he'd already done with Arrival and Prisoners and etc. And this was the right collection. Again, cast, crew, unbelievable all-stars, Oscar-winning, Oscar-nominated. And somehow it lived up to the billing, if not exceeding it. It premiered at Venice almost, what was it, 4 months ago to the day. It was September 3rd. And I just remember I had pulled an all-nighter. I was studying. I was doing stuff for work. I was so wired in to hear what people were going to say. I knew the reviews were going to come out, the first reactions, all that. And just from those first reactions to when I got to see it in theaters, it was just a whirlwind because it went to other film festivals. It went to TIFF and New York Film Festival. And it all lived up to my expectations and hype, and not just the film itself, but like what it's doing financially. And it got Part 2 greenlit, and they're going to be filming that this summer. It's doing so well with awards and nominations, and it's just gonna be going all the way to Oscar night. And it's all worked out in the critical reception and the general audience. And everything about this movie outside the movie was so great and so above what I expected. But the movie itself, visually, sonically, narratively, dramatically, it just all worked for me. And of course, we knew I would love this movie. Like, let's be real. If it was not good, I would be the first one to tell you, because the bar was high. But Zach, I feel like this would be a good time for you to hop in and kind of say, because you of course were excited, but you were, not many people, including yourself, could be on my level of excitement, I would say.
Right. I mean, like, this was my most anticipated of the year, but when you look at if there was to be a bar graph, even though it was number one for both of us, yours is significantly off the chart versus mine, which is like a normal level of excitement. But obviously a huge Denny fan, from Arrival, Prisoners, Sicario, and then going back, like, once this happened and watching Enemy. I still haven't gotten to Incendies or Polytechnique yet, but this was something that I had my tickets for opening night. I was at Marbles, the biggest IMAX screen in North Carolina. And that's the only time I'd been there on your recommendation, to make sure to go and see this movie at that theater on that screen. And it was definitely worth it. So to be able to have something that I'd read the book for this, I had prepared for it. I was super excited. And I felt like, obviously not to your extent, but like, people were entertained, like, were excited for this in the sense of like, oh, this movie looks cool. It's got Timothée Chalamet, it's got Zendaya, but like, to be one of those people who is like in the know of like just what you were about to see, and then to actually have it deliver. I remember our texting after the movie, are just like decompressing as we shared our thoughts and kind of decided what we had just watched and settled on a feeling there before we got on the podcast and really dove into it, which, again, if any of these movies, if you want more info, we've reviewed most of them, so go back and find the episode for it, including Dune. But it absolutely delivered. It, again, Prisoners is one of my like all-time favorite movies, and Dune is surpassed that as like the best Denny movie for me. So all of the hype was very warranted. You had no doubts in it from the start. So no, props to you. I mean, I didn't think it would be bad or anything, but there was still like what if we're overhyping this? But right. It was, all of the hype was warranted. It was justified. And I'm so excited it led North Carolina Film Critics Association with 13 nominations, I believe. Yeah. So glad to see the people of the NCFCA supporting it as well. Hopefully it can bring home some awards, carry that steam into the big award season and into Part 2 as hype builds. I know people, whether you liked it and loved it or you liked it but were like, what about Part 2? It seems like there's a general excitement and people looking forward to what comes next. So I think it's very, very justified to have this as number one on both of our lists.
Very, very well said, Zach. And I'm not really going to add too much, if anything, to that, because I have said so much about this movie. And I'm sure people listening, you probably are familiar with me on Twitter as well. So I talk about it all the time on there, and Denis Villeneuve and how much I love sci-fi and Dune and his work. So if you don't follow me there at Johnny Sobchak, but like, yeah, this thing, it really, I think the biggest, like financially, that was the number one thing. I was like, I feel like the people that are going to go see it are going to like it, even if they're not Villeneuve fans or sci-fi fans. I think they're going to like it. I think critics are going to like it. I think Dune fans, Denis fans, film fans are going to like it. But are enough people going to go see it for it to make that money? Is HBO Max going to really cut into it domestically? And it made over 100 million domestically. It has made nearly 400 million worldwide. It has cleared the threshold. After opening weekend, it was a Tuesday after opening weekend, it got the green light for part 2. All the cast and crew were posting about it. It was like, I remember that moment on Twitter and like on the timeline, film Twitter, etc. Like that was one of the unifying moments that I can remember of like since I've been in that like community. So it was just a really great like moment, and one of the more memorable moments of last year. And I think that says it all with regards to what people thought about this movie and the excitement going forward to the part 2. So keep your eyes peeled, keep your ears open in the next few months. They are supposed to be filming starting in July. So between now and then, of course, there's going to be some significant news coming out about that film, that project, with regards to possible production news and, of course, casting announcements. So there's some pretty big roles that need to be filled. And
all of that will be happening in the midst of an Oscar campaign and hopeful wins as well. So
exactly. So it's going to be, it's a very, I mean, this is the most exciting time ever to be a Dune fan. But I would say also it's the most exciting time just to be a sci-fi film fan or a Denis Villeneuve fan and a fan of like big blockbuster filmmaking that is different from like the usual. So it's a good note to end on with this recap. So
there you have it, the top 10 of 2021. Some similarities, some differences, a good overall look at the year. If you want to break it down further, I have a write-up of mine on the website. We have both of our lists, if you need to recap it, are on our social media channels. We've got some nice graphics showing off the top 10 movies. Thank you all for listening. Thank you again for the support throughout 2021. We appreciate it. We're excited for what's to come in 2022. And we are ready to keep this thing rolling. So again, thank you so much.
Absolutely. I love these kind of episodes, because we just get to really look back and kind of reminisce and just talk about all the good stuff. So appreciate you all listening. Again, if you've been listening for the last year, the last few months, or you just are new to the channel, we very much appreciate it and hope you enjoyed all of our previous episodes, but also this recap, and are looking forward to this year as much as I am. To keep up with us all 2022, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. We always are doing different, things on those channels. We got giveaways on Twitter and Instagram. We have, of course, Zach is working those memes. He's got interviews lined up, all sorts of good stuff. And you can find those on our YouTube channel as well. And those social media accounts can be found with the @ of Inside Film Room.
And while you are at it, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, The Rewind, to have everything all tidied up and sent to your inbox, and also be the first to know about all of our exclusive giveaways. And subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can find a podcast. We are there. And come back next week as we continue this with a look ahead rather than a look back, as we break down our most anticipated movies of 2022. I think Johnny may have spoiled something here, but we'll have to wait and see what 2 through 10 are next week. And we hope to see you then.